Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Envelope Live. I'm Michael Ordoña. I cover film, television, and pop culture for the Los Angeles Times. And you lucky viewer, you just saw an episode of Star's political, historical, sort of incidentally satirical drama, Gaslit. And we have here with us virtually several of the key folks behind the series, starting with series creator Robbie Pickering, whose work you may have seen in Mr. Robot and Search Party or the film Natural Selection. We also have writer Amelia Gray, who worked on Mr. Robot and Maniac, among others. Actor Shea Whigham, whom you pretty much can't help but have seen in lots and lots of shows and movies, including Joker, Vice, Justified, and many others. He plays G. Gordon Liddy here. Patrick Walker, whom you may know from Last Days of Ptolemy Gray or The Resident, who plays security guard Frank Wills in Gaslit. And finally, we have editor Joe Leonard, whose work has been seen in Glee, Empire, and also on Mr. Robot. So everyone, thanks for hanging out with us to talk about this remarkable show. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
How you doing? Thank you, man.
Good to be here.
So to get right into it, the thing that really jumped out to me about your show most of all was the approach. I think that when you hear that you're going to be watching, say, a miniseries about some well-known historical subject, there's sort of a reflexive expectation of stiffness, what I call greatest hits filmmaking, when there's going to be a certain reverence toward the people and the subject. And this ain't that, which makes me very happy. To me, your approach was much, much more about the human beings, how they affected each other, the people and their relationships. Sort of history is made by human beings. Am I in the ballpark, Robbie and Amelia?
Yeah, when I came up with an approach to the show, I mean, I had always wanted to do something about the people around Nixon. Since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with Nixon and the culture around him. But I didn't want to do it in kind of that larger than life kind of mythical kind of Oliver Stone style. I wanted to really highlight the humanity of the characters around Nixon, and in doing so, kind of draw parallels to today. And I didn't want to make a Watergate show for people who love Watergate, if that makes any sense. For people who can't get enough of Watergate, I wanted to make it a show for everybody else, people who couldn't be interested at all in Watergate, frankly. And Amelia happened to be one of those people. So when I was first doing the show and putting it together, I got to educate her on a lot of that stuff, but mostly about the people. I mean, how was that, Amelia?
How was being educated by you?
I feel like you guys educated me too. So
that's right.
Yeah,
Joe, how much did you know about Watergate? I talk all the time
nothing.
about how I didn't know
Nothing.
anything. You didn't?
Honestly,
okay,
like,
I don't feel
well, a little.
alone.
I knew it happened.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at too. I was like, was it at a hotel or next to a hotel? And Robbie's like,
Yeah.
I'll tell you all about it. So that was, but actually, weirdly, my way into Watergate was through Martha Mitchell, which is kind of opposite the way most people who are Watergate freaks get into it. You know, they know the whole story, and then they find this woman that they realized is kind of blew it wide open, but has been forgotten by history. And my way into it was sort of the opposite. It was there was this woman, and her bodyguard was this guy McCord, and then he got involved in the break-in, and then she saw him in the newspaper, and then she was the first to blow the whistle, and so to me it was through her.
Yeah, well, I think that actually really embodies that approach. That it's not the large strokes of history, but the people. The people and their choices made it happen. It's kind of the way I think of Game of Thrones, by the way. So your show is just like Game of Thrones, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we were really working against this great man version of history that I think especially does a disservice to this period. I don't know. So somebody who grew up watching my favorite movie when I was a kid was Oliver Stone's Nixon, and who grew up watching those movies in JFK and All the President's Men, the period always feels very distant because the people don't feel human in this weird way. It's part of this boomer mythification of their own childhood that feels really distancing in a way that makes us think that the things that happened are so singular and will never happen again. Because when in reality, the people who were complicit are very relatable, and so are the heroes. They're all very complex.
Yeah, that making it larger than life is it distances you in a way that say Lion in Winter wouldn't. But that approach, that very human approach, that it hinges on the extreme imperfection of the people. I think you really see it in the characters that you guys play, that Patrick and Shea play. Did you have a sense of that approach, that it was a more alive feeling attack than sort of pictures of museum pieces?
Patrick, do you mind if I jump in?
Please jump as high as you want.
No, when I was approached to this by our director Matt Ross, I remember he said, "Oh, we're going to do something on Watergate," and I said it with Sam, and I wasn't interested in a retelling of that. They did it, and I think when you do it, like in All the President's Men, there's no need to go back and try to recreate that. And I really love difficult characters, not caricatures. And with someone like Liddy, it's very easy to go into a caricature or become a cartoon character. If because you dance along a razor thin line with him, and I knew that. So you're always looking for grounding him in the truth, no matter how big it can be, whether it's gemstone or whether he's talking to Patrick. When I bump into him in the first scene, I bump into him. You're always looking for that truth and to ground it, and through that, a real living, breathing human being can come through, as insane as Liddy is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certainly. I've got a lot to ask you about Liddy, but Patrick, what is your response to that? Did it feel to you maybe different than what you'd expect from working on a historical piece?
I felt completely free in it because there wasn't a lot about Frank's story in history much at all. I mean, even what I could find, like the few interviews that I can find and article clippings and things like that, there wasn't much about him. So I feel like I had the freedom to bring the authenticity that the script gave and then stuff that I read about him in books and different articles and create a character from the essence of who I feel like he was. So I had a lot of fun. It wasn't, and I feel like it's a little more difficult for other characters who are well known, but it was a little challenging when it came down to how to represent Frank, because I knew the cast and I knew like what people know about this story, and like now we're introducing this African-American man who no one knows about. I felt that pressure coming into where I go, oh, I'm the only Black person here. And I felt like the pressure of like, okay, it's the truth. I was like, I have to, like, I got to represent for Frank and I got to represent for like Black people in general, like coming to this character. But I mean, it was a lot of fun. I feel like I had a blank canvas and I painted the best I could.
Also, Robbie's knowledge of this subject is incredible.
Insane.
That doesn't always translate. Sometimes you can have people that understand and on the subject, and they can talk circles around a piece that I do. It comes out flat though. It doesn't jump off the page. The characters don't. And there's a tremendous amount of knowledge within, whether it's a script or whether it's Boardwalk Empire. Howard Corder's knowledge of it was vast, but those characters have to pop, and Robbie and Amelia were able to do that. And you have Joe here too, that's able. His editing, it moves, and you're larking, and the way that we shot it, it was tremendous amounts of work that went into this.
Yeah, I will say it was a treat getting to work on both of your guys' material, and it did pop. It did pop on the screen when I was looking at the dailies. I mean, the amount of thought and energy and intention that was being put in was really clear, but it popped from the page. And that's not always, the case. You sometimes, the dailies sometimes are different thing. These were different. They were animal different. They were amazing. And from the very beginning, and it really, I didn't know that much about Watergate coming into it. I knew enough from my parents, and I knew who Liddy was, and I knew who Dean was. So I knew a little, but I really I delved in through this material and just tried to absorb as much as I could. But really, it was these performances, I was following them. I was following what had been written, and I was following what these amazing actors were doing, and following them down some pretty interesting rabbit holes.
While we're on the subject, before we wheel back to those characters, I'm curious about your marching orders as an editor, because I think, for instance, Adam McKay is doing some really interesting stuff when he takes on historical subjects, and he does such interesting stuff with his editing, or his editors do.
Sure.
So, did you have marching orders? Were there? What were your filmmaking targets? Let's put it that way, Joe.
That's really interesting. There weren't a lot of targets. I mean, obviously, we watched, myself and the other two editors on the show, Franklin Peterson and Lauren Connolly. We watched All the President's Men at the beginning just together, just to kind of have a base of, and it was fun. We watched it in a screening room. And we talked to the director, Matt Ross, as he was shooting, and sent him dailies. We actually had a cool process where every Friday we screened for each other the cut dailies for each week, because they were shooting sort of all at once, all the episodes at once in some ways. And so it was a great experience of just trying to find this kind of tone for the show. And Matt Ross is a very open, creative director in terms of working through this sort of process. So there was a lot of discussion and about performances and about tone and about and so I guess our marching orders were to go forth and find it. And we checked in with them kind of every week during production.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You also, everyone, you got to take on different cinematic approaches within the different stories. I think specifically of Liddy's arc in the show, that Shea, as you were talking about it would be easy to caricature him. He's been caricatured many times. But that on top of this, I don't know what you want to call that front of his that we see immediately. Beneath that, we see his family life, the way he relates to his kids. And then what I think of is the apocalypse. Oh, geez, maybe this is a spoiler. His Apocalypse Now breakdown later. I hope that's not a spoiler.
Colonel Kurt's moment.
Yeah.
It is
It's a teaser.
That's what it's like, right? Were you guys thinking that when you wrote it, when you acted it?
They'll see it this Sunday. Yeah.
I mean,
Sorry. So what question?
Oh, just asking about the.
Go ahead, Robbie. Grab that.
Oh, all right. The kind of different sides of Liddy that come out that keep him from being a caricature.
Well, I mean, when we wrote Liddy, and when we were first writing Liddy, I think, there's this aspect of Liddy that you can get really charmed by and wrapped up in, because I think the two most honest characters in the story are Liddy and probably Frank Wills, and to a degree Martha as well. But he is so entertaining and so fun to read his voice and to write his voice. But what you start to forget about him is that he's a true believer and he's a fascist. And that Liddy's really funny when you're reading his book and when he's on talk radio and all that. But if America went Nazi, tomorrow, or, you know, Liddy would be at the gates, you know, happily. And so you can't write a character like that and lose sight of that, because that's how that person tricks you in real life, and that's how they trick you in a story, is that you don't keep in mind the danger of that person. And you've got to, there is this aspect to fascists that they're really funny and really and they're having fun doing what they're doing. And you know, you read about Adolf Eichmann. He's absolutely a dummy, and he's really funny character. He would be a funny character to write, but he's Adolf Eichmann, you know, and you have to keep that all in mind when you're writing these characters. So that was actually the biggest part of Liddy, was, you know, grounding him not only as a dangerous person, but a human person as well.
Yeah.
You know, grounding him with his family. You know, fascists can have great families, and fascists can be really nice people in life. You know, and you always have to keep writing Liddy is harder than you think, and keeping all that together is giving a full picture of who he is very important. And casting someone like Shea, who's never winking at the audience when they play their roles. You know, you cannot make fun of Liddy and play Liddy. You cannot judge Liddy and play Liddy. You have to be fully into Liddy to do that character justice.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say he's also a great unreliable narrator. You know, from his point of view, he's the hero of every single scene that he's in. Mm-hmm. You know, and so you kind of almost have to cut the scene that way. It's in his point of view, and yet, you know, there's this sort of magic moment in the 7th episode where he's narrating it, and it's like classic, like he's writing home to mom or to his wife and kids, and it's what you're seeing starts to suddenly not match up with what he's saying, and that was him all the way through the series. You know, you have to give the audience some credit for being able to find that distance themselves, to absolutely be charmed and like won by this character, and at the same time mortified by the fact that they are.
Shea, did you get any particular guidance that you found helpful? I mean, did you have any important questions that were answered for you?
Oh, I mean, how long do you have? You know, you know, you have to, with a character like him that is so well known. You have to really. I told Matt that we have to make our Liddy our own. You're not doing a mimicry. You're not, you know, with all the research you do, you have to be careful not to play your research in this at the onset until you really find your footing with them. You know, and so, because, like I said, it can become a characterization really quickly. So you're looking for things like, Robbie and I had long talks about this, and Amelia, he's deeply, deeply insecure. The insecurity is what drives him. And it can be from insecurity of rats and lightning to he puts a G before Gordon because he wants to be like J. Edgar Hoover. But when he graduates from the FBI, he says, just call me Gordon today because I don't want J. Edgar to think that I followed him, you know, with the G and the J. So he's deeply, deeply insecure in so many facets of him. And then at the same time, you know, he's all, like Robbie and I, again, we talked about, all he wants is to test his will. His whole life is about testing his will. Thus his autobiography. That, and to be seen by the king. He wants to be seen by Nixon, just recognized, you know, which again feeds into his insecurity, which is funny and scary and beautiful with Franny and the kids. So yeah, it's all in there.
Yeah, it's scary because these are a lot of authoritarian people who are in power and acting on their authoritarian urges. Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, fascism and authoritarianism is just tyranny of the mediocre. It's just a collection of people. You know, you look at any of these people, it's not a collection of geniuses. It's a collection of mediocre, insecure, very relatable people who just happen to have weaponized their insecurity.
Oh, that is a really great way to put that. And it also, by the way, lends some weight to the funnier moments with these folks, like how bumbling the burglars are, and when they're hiding in the headquarters so badly. They're pretty mediocre, and the people keep saying, well, I don't think that guy could have thought of this. But Patrick, I wanted to get back to Frank for just a moment, because of you were talking earlier about how there wasn't that much biographical data about him. People don't know that much about him. I didn't know much about him. So I'm just curious about how much of that was invention for you. Like, was the $2.50 raise real, stuff like that? What were some of the key inventions that affected your portrayal of the character?
That was real. And much like, I'm sorry to go past your question, Shea is just so good on this show. It's because I love acting so much. I've watched these episodes over and over again to watch him. I've watched scenes at least 12 times. Like, constantly. I watch these scenes.
Man.
Yeah.
I don't even mean to like, I'm going to answer that question. Shea, since I have you, when you go into these scenes, right? Because it feels like you are so, I was there in one of those scenes. It feels like you are so locked in. What is the thought process when going into some of these scenes? And like how are you approaching these moments, especially when the character is that extreme? Like, what is your how do you go into these moments?
Oh man, I mean, well, let's just take the 7th episode that we're talking that these two wrote so brilliantly. We're doing a movie with. I mean, Joe, jump in here with me. We're doing a film within a film in 7, and
we are.
So it's. And I'm going to give you a second because I really want you to answer this question about your character, because I think you did just a beautiful, beautiful job with him. But Robbie, Joe, we can jump in here because I mean, we stayed in it. I stayed in it for about 10 days.
Well, you would say that. You'd say, stay with me here. Stay with me here. And every time I looked at the dailies, I'd be with you. I was staying with you. Like I can imagine the people on set, they were staying with you too.
Yeah.
Man. Like and then you would get there. Oh man, but you were in that pocket. It's amazing.
You have to, and it comes from a place of relaxation and concentration, as I like to say. You gotta, and what Pat and I we didn't get to do a lot together, but that scene that we did, it's pivotal because he's getting. Well, I'll let you answer that actually, Pat. You're getting the gig, and I bump into you, and we have this moment, and I mean, I tried a bunch of different shit on you there. You know what I mean? Remember that? And you just you went with it.
Yeah. No. Man, Shea is so good. So, the thing is, I think too, when there's actors who are so good, they can pull you into a moment, because we come from the scene of Frank just getting his job, and then to be so happy on the phone. When Shea came with these different, almost different ways of doing each scene, it adjusted each way that I responded to him. So it was easy in those scenes. What was your original question? It was
it's about inventions that helped you flesh out Frank.
Right. So a lot of it, like Shea said, was me talking to Robbie and Amelia. It was a lot of questions. It was a lot of like, hey, what do you think about this? It was a lot of talking to Matt and coming up with different things. But the beauty of doing this project for me was I felt free to do whatever it is that, like, whatever it was that I felt like Frank would do. And I tried my best to like sit in that space for as long as I could before we did certain scenes. So that way I was prepared when it came down to doing it. So I wasn't just doing stuff that was Patrick or doing stuff just to be a good actor, but doing stuff that Frank would do or making decisions that Frank would make. But the $2.50 thing, that was real. Maybe some of the small nuances of of joy that the character had in the top of the 6th episode. Like those were little things that I wanted to add because I didn't want it to feel so drab and so like, oh, poor Frank. Because the first shot we see is when Tuffy goes over the late rent notices. So it feels we already know it's serious. So I wanted to sculpt it out where it felt like, oh, he still has hope, and we watch him lose hope throughout the episode. And again, it is written so well. It's not much to have to invent because it's already on the page, but having conversations with Robbie, Amelia, and Matt, it made things so easy.
You guys' answers are great. I have to say we're running out of time. So despite this long list of questions I have, I really only have one more for you. But I do want to say about that Tuffy episode. Yeah, I think Robbie, Amelia, there needs to be a spinoff for Frank and Tuffy. Okay, so since we're running out of time, and I really want to bring Amelia back into this, Amelia and Robbie, I want to circle back to the heart of the show. Robbie, you've described it as being about complicity, and I think that's obviously apparent in the stories of John Dean and Martha Mitchell, and in different ways for other characters. I'm curious about a number of things related to that. Why Martha Mitchell's story would be a great way for you to explore that, and on top of that, I want you to address Judy Hoback. If I'm getting her name right, that what she said to the FBI agents, I think, is my concern at the heart of Watergate, or refusing to accept the results of the last election, or January 6th, that to true believers, laws don't matter, which to me is the most chilling thing about the show. Okay, so there are two things. Robbie, Amelia, go.
Yeah, I mean, well, so at the heart of the show for us is two marriages. It's John Dean and Mo Dean. They come together under this kind of crucible of Watergate, and they're stronger than ever. They're still married in real life. They're still together. And John Mitchell and Martha Mitchell, they, under the pressure of this whole thing, they fall apart. And to me, that's the heart of it. We're looking at complicity in ways. With Martha, it's like, okay, Martha was happy to go to the parties and happy to fundraise and happy to be a part of the Nixon machine until it was turned on her, and then it was a tragedy. When she kind of falls under the boots. And for somebody like her, she really just wants kind of the good stuff without any of the bad stuff, which is how things work generally. And then Judy Hoback is I think that's really, I think you really pinpointed something that was important to us as well, and to our writers in the writing room. We really worked on that monologue of hers, because it's really important to show the way an ordinary person perceives this kind of fascist machine, and the machine is portrayed by Liddy in that scene, and Judy is saying, like, to people like him, laws don't matter, people don't matter. How are we supposed to have a society? How are we supposed to function? And it's a huge question that we're asking the audience, really.
Yeah, for the show being about different modes of complicity is really examining why some people are complicit and why some people speak out, right? So like Amelia said, Martha's a really interesting character, and I love writing conservative women in general because they're kind of punk rock, right? You want to root for them because they're women, but they're also kind of authoritarian, and they're like punk rock for fascism a lot of times. And the fact that the Nixon machine was turned on Martha Mitchell, who benefited from it at first, doesn't make her any less of a hero. In fact, it makes her more of kind of a realistic hero, because heroism, just like complicity coming from bad people or good people, heroism can come from flawed people, and often comes from flawed people doing selfish things. And I love that you really locked onto that Judy Hoback monologue, because it really is kind of one of a few scenes and monologues in the show, which I think is really going to the heart of what the show is about and showing that it's not just about Watergate and it's not just about this time, that this time is really, we're trying to say something else about now. And there is this aspect of our current politics and a current strain in our politics that people are willing to do anything in the pursuit of what they think is a kind of sacred goal. And what I love about that Judy Hubback scene and the way that she plays it is kind of in the scene she's playing it, and she's playing it with the kind of and we wrote it with the idea that this woman is about to describe a murder or like Liddy killing someone or doing something horrible. But what she's really describing and the terror she's describing is an existential terror about a fact of life, which is that we are made up of a lot of true believers and a lot of people who are doing things that they think are noble, and they're hurting a lot of people, and they're willing to go to any lengths to do it. And that is a fact of all life. But it is also a fact of all life that there are people like Martha who are willing to buck that, even if they've been complicit in it.
Good answers, guys. I mean, there are so many things that are occurring to me that branch off what you're talking about that I wish we could explore, but we are out of time. I really want to thank you guys for taking time to hang out with us and answer these questions. And you, the audience, for tuning in. I hope you'll watch the entire series because it's really good. So Robbie Pickering, Amelia Gray, Shea Whigham, Patrick Walker, and Joe Leonard, thank you so much for being part of Envelope Live tonight.
Thank you. We really
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for having us.
Thank you, guys.